Hello and welcome to the next episode of Artistry of Code podcast. In this episode, we've spent about an hour going through different stages of the software development process, and we've tried to figure out how the quality on the different stages can and should be assured, who is really responsible for the quality, and we've tried out to answer if that's really QA team. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Artistry of Code podcast, where we, together with our guests, are seeking ways of doing things right and having fun with it.
Software, architecture, soft skills, teamwork, and other crazy buzzwords.
Are you ready? Let's bring more value to the business. Okay, it's time to warm up, so let's summarize our last 2 weeks. I will let myself start with my summary. For me, it is a little bit a breakthrough on the private manner, because finally I managed to get keys for my new built house, and actually all the stuff going on right now on my side is all connected to that fact. So I'm like picking the floors. I'm came back to the design program that I use, because we decided to make a design of our house ourselves. And to be honest, I don't have much time for a personal development from the professional view, but maybe this experience with 3D design programs will pay off at some time. I don't know. It has been a little bit struggle, but I definitely can help anyone right now to how to work with it, how not to get stuck in the wall in these programs. That's all about it.
What kind of software are you using?
It's Pecan Planner.
I can also recommend the mostly free one, which is Home by Me. It's also pretty cool too.
Good insight for the people who might want to design their apartments on themselves, but I don't recommend it. Don't do it. It's not worth your time.
Well, maybe when you're refurbishing, right? So when you're trying to do a small makeover at your current place, that's also valuable. I was using this kind of software once upon a time, just to have, like the measurements of my current flat and how I can put the furniture in a different way, things like that. Also useful. But when it comes to my 2 weeks, they were pretty much occupied by working on the last snippet. So the Learn, Apply, Repeat, which came out last week. So guys, please check it out if you didn't do it so far. The hardest part, except for recording itself on my own and mastering and doing all of those podcasting elements of it, was preparing the article itself. As you rightfully, Artur, noticed, the episode lasts nearly 10 minutes, while LinkedIn shows approximate reading time of 8 minutes. So I'm not sure if I'm reading too slow or what was happening there. But yeah, I'm quite proud of the outcome there. Hopefully, guys, you like what was delivered. I consider this article as a living document, really. So if you have any feedback, you would like me to elaborate on some elements a bit more, feel free to shout out with a comment there. I will definitely read it through, and then perhaps even include your point in the article as well.
Grzegorz, put it on GitHub, then we can make a pull request to it.
That's I'm actually, the whole community could then. That's quite a good idea, Artur. Marek, how about you and your 2 weeks?
So my last 2 weeks were also a lot involving the construction stuff, let's say. And as we speak during this recording, the floor screed at my home is being poured. So pretty exciting time. Even with some delays, it's still pretty happy to get another step done. But I also tried to squeeze in a bit of side project development time. And I came across some challenge around DDD, let's say, in JavaScript and or slash TypeScript. While I wanted to ensure that myself and anyone who would potentially contribute in the future will not mutate the properties of the domain objects directly. And obviously, unfortunately, we don't have private setters in JavaScript. We could do that by defining a public getter for every property of the object, but it would be painful and require a lot of bootstrap code there. So I wanted something simpler and quicker. And I came across the plugin for ESLint, which is somehow called ESLint plugin FP from the functional programming. And it contains the rule of no mutation, which can allow a mutation of this. Yeah, so inside the domain object, you can modify the property, but it will throw an error if you modify the domain object property from outside functions, which is pretty cool. And in the end, yeah, it shows the error when I try to do so. So it's again something being on the guard there, trying to slap me when I want to do something stupid.
Yeah, just a quick question regarding this one. Did you try the hash prefixed names for properties?
Yeah, that came to my mind, but this way the properties wouldn't be available even to read outside. So I didn't want to go this way. I could potentially do like to snapshot or something like that, and always read from this function, but it would give quite a lot of overhead. So I found this way to be simpler.
Yeah, but it's not really covering all the security issues that you would like to resolve. It's still like you said on the previous episode. Still, people can trick it.
Yeah,
Disable
can.
ESLint.
But then I will have my CA, which will slap them anyway. So,
okay.
So don't do it. Don't try if you are a contributor from the future. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think we again touching the quality of the code here, and this fortunately is our today subject, and we want to again talk about the quality and focus more about the people here and at least ask the question. Maybe we will not be able to answer it in 100%, but we want to ask the question: who is really responsible for the quality in the software delivery process?
Quality assurance team. End of episode. Thank you.
That's it for today.
Yeah, that's it for today. We're done. We can go back to our jobs. Actually, the reason why we are recording this episode is that we don't think that's the quality assurance team, so-called quality assurance team, as probably each and every organization defines this a little bit differently, and the term QA may vary. And I saw it happen on the conferences. And there are people called QAs, different roles. I mean, the QA name was used to describe something entirely else. So, in the end of the day, that's just a position. It's not a position name. That's a role and each organization defines this differently. So to set the scene for the episode, let's take the perspective of a developer like me or Artur or Marek. So when we are working on a team, we're frequently being given some sort of a requirement or some sort of like an input for what has to be delivered. Most of the cases for us, it's a so-called user story. That's the fancy thing now. Everybody works with user stories. So let's spend a minute and let's try to draw the picture of a perfect input, be it a user story, something else, which we as developers would highly value, and what would allow us again to provide a better quality at the output, right? So, Artur, what's your opinion and what's your idea of a great user story, great input for you as a developer to build up a feature or an idea which has been outlined?
Yeah, so first of all, I would expect a very thoughtful set of acceptance criteria. So, from different perspectives, hopefully, not only from the perspective of a person who prepared them from the business. I would like to see rather a set of acceptance criteria from the user perspective. So, I would like to know the whole process that leads to the new feature that we want to introduce, how the user can reach it, what are the requirements for us as a business that runs this feature, what we would like to have on our side as an outcome of using this feature. So all the information actually, which in the real life usually are not delivered, or people might tend to like think that things that are obvious. Yeah? In my opinion, this is the hardest part for people who are preparing the input for the development team, that they are so into the topic that some parts of those topics are for them are obvious. And I would ask everyone to who is preparing user stories, epics, other business ideas to implement, to make our perspective, that we are new to the domain. Probably if it's the new feature, we are probably totally new to the domain. We don't know all the details that were mentioned on the business meetings, and were mentioned by the business analyst. We don't know it, and when we start to make our decisions, how it should look like, it does not always correspond to the whole picture that the business has about it.
I would say that it's also our responsibility as developers to start asking the questions. Yeah, as soon as the story or an epic arrives, we never should work on the assumptions. Because it will end up badly most of the time. So this is again the time when the good relation between the development team and business/product is crazy important, because as closer as these two groups work together, I believe the quality is better. Yeah?
Yeah, the thing which is frequently mentioned is that it's very kind of recommended that the developers are actually understanding the how the business works, where the business earns money, where the business tries to save the money. Otherwise, they are not essentially able to provide solutions to the problems. They are able to implement solutions given to them, like, like, sorry for using that term, code monkeys, right? So you're being given the solution, and then you have to code it, and that's your job. Okay, we can play it this way, but we I guess we don't want to play it this way, right? So I personally think that we as developers, we are hired to solve problems, but not technical problems. When we are hired to work with the business, we are there to help the business, and helping sometimes requires, and actually most of the time requires, understanding how that business operates, right? But then again, you guys already know that there is that gap very frequently, that people are not having that direct access to the business, and for that reason, I also recommend, when it comes to the building the user stories, and you saw it in the past, to include that very small section at the beginning of each and every story, which is why we're doing it. And then in that why section, the business description of the reasoning behind this change is explained, so that the people coding it will understand how does this fit into the business.
Yeah, in my perspective, and from my experience, I wouldn't like to like allow to the situation where when we don't have any connection to the business. It's very difficult, and I feel like when, for example, the new team is introduced on the development team or the team of analysts on the business side, it doesn't matter. When something changes in the organization, on the edge between the development and the, let's say, feature design, I feel like the process of cooperation between them should be set up once again together. Yeah, so if it's a beginning, we should like gather people from both sides of this edge and make them work out a process that would be suitable for both. And I find it crucial and clear, because it won't lead to some kind of conflicts and like pushing the responsibility to the other side. Yeah, like from one side they can say, oh, they didn't developed it as we expected. On the other side, oh, they didn't describe it as we wanted. It's like we need to work as a team, as a company. So we need to have clear rules of cooperation. And I think it's a crucial, because it will eliminate lots of quality issues during the planning and then the delivery.
And it also, for a lot of people, makes a lot of fun. I recall that once we were working on a heavily backend project with very little touch with the front ends and with the actual customers. I recall that some of our colleagues had the opportunity to work with the, let's say, customers of what we are delivering, and they were very happy about this, because they actually had the possibility to meet the people who are using their software and see how this impacts their lives. And that's kind of an experience which I, as a developer, I am always looking for, uh, to have that person from the end of the process, who's the user on the demo, saying, "Okay, that's going to save me a lot of time. Thank you for that." That these were the most happiest moments I had in my career so far.
Yeah, I would definitely support this statement, and I see that the close cooperation with the business is giving us as developers the bigger perspective, which, in my feeling and my experience, it really helps to fight against the burnout. So I enjoy the work much more when I see the big context, why we want to deliver this thing, and why it will bring the money to the business. Because in the end, this is our purpose here at the company. So we are here to support the business, as you, Grzegorz, mentioned, and we are here to help business to earn the money.
Yeah, but it's not only about the money, I think, because um, when we don't have good cooperation and we kind of don't know what we are actually going to deliver, I personally I am quite stressed out. I don't like this situation. I feel like this work that I'm delivering might not be something that they expect. And usually in the startup area, when things need to be delivered fast because we need to quickly react to the feedback from the market, it's very stressful and very yeah, I feel very insecure personally, and probably other people also, because we need to deliver something that we don't know. So it's also about the stress and how we feel in the company as a developer, as a part of the team.
So it seems that the conclusion which kind of emerges from that talk so far is that close and tight cooperation is actually fostering the quality, right? Because we're delivering the right product to the right person. And by the fact that we are super engaged into the subject allows us to spot for any bad turns which we avoid taking. So yeah, that's really cool. Before we jump to the next point, I just wanted to quickly go back to that acceptance criteria thing which you've mentioned, Artur, because I think we have a nice tip to share when it comes to forming those acceptance criteria. What we used to do in order to lay them out was to use the Gherkin format, so the given, when, then way of explaining the acceptance criteria. And we were using this quite a lot. And the theory which I have is the following: if you're not able to explain the outcomes on a user story without the given, when, then syntax, you're not understanding the problem really. Because if you would be understanding it enough, then you should be definitely able to use that simple format to explain it. So that can be used as a kind of like a heuristic to point out that, okay, probably something has to be rethinked because the story might not be ready enough to provide the right product or the right quality, right? So use this as a measure to check if we are okay. So let's assume that by now the user stories are in a pretty good shape, right? And we have access to the business. We have that cooperation running. Pretty much is everything is pretty much described, obviously to some extent, right? Because we cannot expect to have all the details there at the very beginning. Some of those will be solved along the way. What happens next with such a user story? It's being taken to the team just to, I don't know, perhaps estimate it, talk it through. Guys, what are your best and perhaps worst experiences when it comes to dealing with that step?
We don't estimate, don't you remember? From the first episode. Yeah, but being more serious here, yeah, I would say we would go to the refinement with the story or any sort of meeting with this purpose, as it may vary between the teams and companies. And this, I would say, this is the place where a lot of fun can happen. Because there are two ways, or at least two ways, how it can go. So the first way is that the story, let's say, hopefully it's already in good shape, as you mentioned, and anything will happen basically. So the team will accept the story and it will go through without any further discussion, without any deeper consideration.
Okay, Marek, but does this really happen, that the story is accepted as it is without any question?
Yeah, I would say it happens from time to time. Yeah, it can happen if the team is tired, if the story being discussed is like maybe the last one after 2 hours meeting, yeah, and everyone wants a break or wants to go home, and yeah, I would say this kind of situations can trigger this issue.
So it's Murphy's law. What can happen will eventually happen.
Yeah, so some things can go wrong, and unfortunately, they often goes wrong. Yeah, but least, hopefully, this will not happen to, to our listeners too often, at least. So the other way how it can go is that the team will start asking the questions, and at this stage, if we keep the assumption that the story is fairly clear from the business point of view, I would say that the technical questions have started to come to the board. And depends on the team setup. This can be the place to do that, or there can be like a specific meeting for that, which we, as three of us, when we were working together, experienced in our team. We had the separate technical planning meeting where we discussed really technical details where we didn't involve the business people, let's say, to consume their time when they don't really need to be there.
Yeah, so it was the trick to put some discussions on a separate track if they were not relevant for the refinement process itself. When you were talking about those questions, and when we were talking about ensuring further quality of the user story, it recalled me about one of the approaches, which is to use the definition of ready when it comes to Scrum, for an instance. And I must admit that uh, I've attempted to set that definition of ready multiple times, but for some reason it didn't stick. It's very hard for me to say why it didn't stick. Maybe it's the case because of the fact that a lot of the user stories were very technical, and those technical user stories had a very long checklist on that definition of ready, which led to the situation where people were not using it anymore. So I think that a successful implementation of a definition of ready, which I saw once when I was working with a consulting company and we were building up a CRM application, there was a very lightweight definition of ready there. And it was mostly executed by the business people preparing the user stories, I would say. And this then worked. But when we tried to set up that definition of ready for the technical user stories, well, it didn't work out. Do you have any experiences on that, or?
Yeah, I do, and I also have a feeling that it never worked as well as it should. Uh, I remember that we tend to sometimes forget. Sometimes we are too tired or ready to check all the things from the list. And the most annoying thing I remember was that if we agreed on some too detailed points of it, then it was like the list was very long in the end for the story, and like half of the points were not applicable to this kind of story because they
Yeah,
were
yeah.
too detailed. They were like tailored for only some part of, for example, the story that was regarding the backend and the front end together. Yeah, and when you get the front end, then half of them you can like cross out because they're not relevant. And in the end, it didn't work as expected. So I would say that maybe the improvement there might be to tick or list the things that are really important. And I might list some of them. For me, for example, the most important definition of ready is like there is no external dependency to finish the story. For me, it was always the most important thing. There's always a design when you need to create the front end, for example. That's also very important. But don't go too much into details. It would be my recommendation.
Yeah, because that's going to be too heavy, and the amount of exceptions that you're going to make while using it, like not applicable, not applicable, not applicable, that's going to take away all the benefit from having this. So
Yeah,
probably,
the feeling rises that it does not make sense
yeah,
to waste
yeah.
time on it.
So this probably should lead to the situation, because the whole idea with the definition of ready is quite cool. That's a validation point, which you can use to check if everything is okay. But if you're being too specific there, problems will arise. So trying to find out thin line, the threshold where it's too much or too little, yeah, that's difficult. It probably depends on your project and organization. Cool. So then, since we refined this and estimated or not, as we know, that's a discussable thing. um, at some point, we're taking this into the iteration, right? So, let's say the requirements are now specified. We validated this using our definition of ready, so it's ready for us to work on, and the work has to start somehow. And Marek, you've touched this partially. So we're not going to go a lot into the detail of how to do sprint planning in Scrum. Probably most of people know that. What we can quickly share here is that we had the planning ceremony actually split into two. And the first part was run with the product owner, who was more or less from the business side, but also quite technical. But we didn't want to involve his time into the technical aspects of the planning, so we had a separate technical planning meeting where a lot of quality assurance and magic happened. Right, so guys, which of the highlights you would like to give when it comes to planning the technical execution of a user story?
I would highlight as the primary thing the fact that we agreed on some way of solving that problem. So the overall architecture of the solution was determined there, was accepted by all the team members. All the team members had the same knowledge on how it should work from the technical level, from the technical perspective. We were on the same page. So, like from the very beginning, we cut down most of the crucial discussions that might then exist on the code review phase. So we agreed on the first, then we don't need to waste time on first the discussion on code review, and then the time spent on fixing it to like find a sweet spot between two perspectives of two distinct developers. Um, Second thing is like organizing it into the tickets and going through the checklist that we had. The checklist was not that detailed, so it wasn't very much making us tired of it, but we could verify that we delivered everything we need to start working on it, and so that everyone from the team, every developer could take it and start because everything was there. Like everything was there in the description of the story. We had all the external dependencies most of the time because not every time it's possible. But I wanted also to add that we shouldn't be that much strict if we want to be agile. Yeah, so we need to remember and also find that point when we can be strict or we can like bend our rules to go further. So for me, those 2 points were the most crucial. What about you, Marek?
I would say that the thing which you mentioned in terms of organizing things in tasks, yeah, we were always trying to split the story into the subtasks, which was pretty cool. And even if at my current company we don't do that at the planning, I tend to do that myself because I have this kind of routine already into my heart. And I find it really helpful because when I develop the things, I see like clear lines where the MR should happen, and it's much easier to review later on, which can benefit the quality. Obviously, it's easier to merge, yeah, because we were also trying to like distinguish if the thing can be merged separately or not, if it will break the master or not, etc. Yeah.
Just to quickly add on that subtasks thing, because I don't think that is like super clear. We did that splitting, but it was based on a very simple concept, which is while we were doing the technical planning, we were opening the code. And in the subtasks, we were pointing out the changes which we know that will have to happen in the code or to the components of the system. So these were physical, measurable steps, which we, as a group of developers, found out by looking at the code, and that's the merit here, I would say. We've opened that editor in order to produce good subtasks, right?
I wanted to get back to the subtask and mention some rule that I remember from the very beginning of my career when I was working with Kanban. And then the rule was, if you can split the bigger story to smaller ones, always do it. Yeah, because the smaller part you deliver, the easier it goes. It's only applicable to it's also applicable to the CIs and CD attitude. So like deliver small chunks of code so other can integrate quickly. It's like you said, Marek, easier to test, easier to verify the code quality on the code review. It's easier for everyone. So if it's possible to separate a small distinct change in the code, even if it does not deliver the full feature, I think it's worth it, because you can cover it with the feature flag and enable it in the future. Yeah, but it makes the work easier for the rest of the team.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Artur, here. And I would also say that the another benefit of splitting the main story, let's say, into small tasks and merging them in small chunks of work is also benefiting the team in the way that it's first of all interesting exercise for the developer to find the way how to develop big change in small chunks which will not break the code work in the production, because it can happen that especially if we are in 100% continuous delivery setup, that these changes will arrive at production before the other parts will be merged. So I found it really interesting and helping to develop myself also. But the second thing is that we all know that we have deadlines or sedlines in the projects. And when we are under the pressure at some point and the story is maybe quite bigger than usual, when the story is split and the first part, let's say, has been merged, the other developer can potentially have a way to go in and help, because maybe the foundation is already done, and there is a way to help and support and push the delivery quicker.
Yeah, and something to also point out when it comes to the opening of the code and the quality, and this is something which resonates with our third episode, so the one about approaching refactoring, is that I also recall that when we were doing those quick lookups on the code, figuring out how to solve it, we already were able to identify some refactorings along the way. So we saw that, okay, this component has to be modified, and this one has to use that. But then again, we see, okay, here's a place for refactoring. So let's agree that you guys are going to refactor that this sprint, for instance. So having that look there brings a lot of opportunities. There's also two things which I would really like to highlight, and I think these are the quality killers here, meaning the killer moves to improve the quality. First of all, while we were splitting up the story to subtasks, we had two very specific subtasks all the time: test case design and test case execution, right? And the power of the test case design subtask was that the testers on the team were involved together with developers at the beginning of the sprint in a session, like a call over Hangouts, whatever, where the test cases were outlined at the very beginning of the user story. Then even the developers could implement automated test cases based on that. For me, this is the definition of quality assurance, because you're doing this upfront. You're thinking about this, and in order to assure the quality, you're acting proactively. And this turned out to work fine. Even some testers started to write the tests at some point, right? Because we went to that direction, that we enabled them to write tests for the applications, and that was very, very cool. And I think there's one organizational point which is also fostering quality, which is the thing that even if we had the technical planning happening, and we saw, while talking about the implementation details of the story, how to introduce the changes, that we reached a dead end, and we recognized that something's wrong with that story, and we were courageous enough to take that step back and say, okay, guys, this cannot enter the sprint, because there are a lot of unknowns still. Even though initially the definition of ready was satisfied, we were exchanging those things from the contents of the sprint.
Yeah, I wanted to quickly go back to the subtask you mentioned about like making the use cases for the story. And I wanted to say that it's actually the second time we are providing some kind of use cases that can be used in automated tests. So first one was the acceptance criteria in the format of given when then, which can be used then if they're written very good in a good manner, then can be like taken straight from the story and implemented as acceptance test. And the second part is like validation of them with the whole team, like the tester, the developer. They used to sit together and make up those use cases that we wanted to cover, not only by automated tests but also with the manual tests. But yeah, we have mark them down. So first of all, we can verify if they align to the acceptance criteria, and second, we have written it down in the code itself. So we had an input for the developer to start from the implementation of test, which is very valuable. It's encouraged to use the TDD, some another way of providing the good quality of code. Yeah, and we have a second verification of acceptance criteria.
So at this point, we covered the workflow to the moment where the sprint is planned and the story is planned. Now, when it comes to the very execution of the implementation, we already know that we can employ some of the automated quality assurance tools. So we covered that in the fourth episode called Modern Developers Toolkit. So you can go to that episode to learn more on this one. Also, the snippet from Artur, the quick guide on sizing the unit of the unit testing, is going to be very helpful over there. Yeah, essentially, as you know, we love that subject. So each and every episode is going to have a little bit of something which is going to be relevant for quality assurance. But there's one bit which we didn't talk through, and it's manual testing.
Yeah, after the execution, we definitely most likely will have some kind of manual testing, and it still helps the quality a lot because the things can be broken and not being caught by the automated tests. And this is usually handled by people who we most likely call testers. Yeah, and this is the first time when we really call the responsible people for the quality as testers in this place. So I have strong impression that the clear answer to the questions stated at the very beginning of this episode is coming to the conclusion that we first of all we as every member of the development team are responsible, but we can also clearly see that the quality of the code and of the software starts long before any sort of manual or even automated testing, I think.
Yeah, it reminds me about the acronym formed from the sentence garbage in, garbage out. So GIGO. Whatever we have at the beginning of the process is, and the quality of it is going to produce the same quality or worse. Obviously, we want to have the same level of quality at the output than on the input. Although I guess everybody saw those memes over the internet with the people trying to draw something on the back of the other person, and how the image gets distorted on each and every step. We might include one of those memes into the episode of the into the description of the episode. So yeah, be mindful about that, and always request as highest quality as you can get, but being reasonable, because otherwise you can then end up with unrealistic definitions of ready, for an instance, right? Which are not going to give you a lot. They're going to push a lot of a lot of work to the upstream, and that's not going to be working well for the cooperation, right? So trying to balance that, it's probably the most difficult part of the job.
Yeah, I just recall one sentence which I've heard in the past when some developer told on some kind of discussion that okay, I will push it if it's not working, the testers will catch it. Yeah. Yeah, if at any point you will hear something like that, or it will come to your mind, stop, put the brake on, and think twice, because it's not the good way of working.
Yeah, I'm typically against firing people, but I would make an exception in such a situation.
Yeah, go for it. Fire them.
I would like to give some credits to the testers themselves, because we want to say that we don't want to make them the opportunity to shine on, and it's always true. We should deliver the best we can and test what we can. But I wanted to mention that manual testers and testers themselves are people with very specific character traits, and they are very into into the details. They are not attached to the code, as we sometimes tend to be. They want to challenge the code. They want to find the bug because it's their job. And even if we will deliver the best code we can, we won't challenge our own solution that much. Yeah, it's like with the own child. You won't be that challenging to your own child than to the other. Yeah, for example, which is playing with yours in the playground. So the same goes to the code that we deliver, and without them, I think that the process is of ensuring the quality would not be full.
The last question which I have on my mind is, who's the QA then? Anyway, and I think that we answered this throughout the episode, and I guess, guys, you're going to agree with me that we all, as developers on those development teams and testers alike, partially even people who are providing the requirements, we're ensuring the quality. We are the QAs. We're not going to attempt to redefine the way the word understands QA. We just wanted to give our own perspective on this.
Yeah, but we went through all the stages of creating the software, and we could see that on each and every stage we had something to say about how to ensure the quality. So every people in this chain of delivering the software is engaged into the quality. And as you mentioned, the role of garbage in, garbage out. If we will introduce garbage on any phase, then on the next phase it will like only rise. Yeah, so I think that we all are responsible. And yeah, we agreed at the very beginning to agree on that statement.
It's all set up. Having this said, we can close today's episode. Stay safe, have a nice week, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, and hear you next time. That's all for today. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Visit our page on Facebook and Twitter, leave us a comment under the episode, subscribe to the updates, and share it with others.
We would like to hear your feedback so that we can prepare more interesting content for you to enjoy. Hear you next time!